2025 Cool Wall January edition. We all know what this is. We will be looking at the coolest and the not so coolest cars of the year. I will be updating this every month. All opinions are my own and feel free to disagree in the comments below. Starting off, let us talk about the Ferrari F80. The sixth installment in Ferrari's hypercar lineup, announced late last year. It got mixed reviews, to be put lightly. The V6 hybrid powertrain did not bode well with die-hard enthusiasts despite a 1200 horsepower output, and it was a hit or miss in terms of the looks as well. Now, I for one actually liked the way it looked. In my opinion, it actually harked back to a lot of the lines from the F40, especially if you look at the side panels. And on top of that, having a Le Mans winning engine in their Halo car is very much in tune with the Ferrari hypercar DNA. If you look at the LaFerrari, it did hybrid powertrains before most brands were jumping into it, and it sort of dictated what Ferrari were going to do for the next 10 years. So all in all, this is a good recipe. And for all those reasons, I'm gonna have to say this car is seriously uncool. That's right, it is seriously uncool. First of all, if you have the name F80 and it is not a BMW M3, you're already starting off on the wrong foot because you have to explain that no, this is actually a multi-million-dollar Ferrari. On top of that, if you're gonna create a car that looks like a spaceship and has the visual presence of a Christopher Nolan film on IMAX, you're gonna have to back it up with the audio. I mean, just listen to this car. Yeah, that doesn't really scream multi-million-dollar Ferrari now, does it? And I feel like I could forgive everything if it wasn't for that black eyelid up top. The thing is, you can't change it. And I get it that it's supposed to hark back to the 365, but the 12 cylindry is already doing that. So having a two-tone multi-million-dollar hypercar that doesn't sound well and also shares the name with a BMW, it's just seriously uncool. Car number 2 is the Hyundai Ioniq 5.
What you think? I'm gonna let you roll in a Hyundai?
Yes, Han, I would drive a Hyundai. And it's not just the Ioniq 5, but also the Ioniq 5N. Now guys, we need to be honest with ourselves here. Korean cars are actually pretty damn good now. It's not just that, but I'm gonna go ahead and argue that Hyundai probably has the best looking lineup out of all production cars right now. I mean, just look at these cars. They have come a long way, and especially with their N division, Hyundai is one of those few brands that actually do listen to the customers. They understand what people want, and they're doing a pretty good job at it. Before, they'd look like pieces of scrap metal, but now they look like cars that normal people would go and say that, damn, that's a good looking car. And the Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 5N. Now, I know what you guys are gonna say, right? When a car does Type R, Type S, Type N, or whatever special division, automatically it's for car nerds, and you have to explain that your car is a bit more special than the normal version. That automatically becomes uncool. But unless you get their blue two-tone color, this doesn't look much different from the normal one, and it hides itself pretty well. Not even that, they've somehow added electronic shifting in a manual, which I don't even know how they've done. So it's clear that they sort of understand that they want to make their car stand out. They want to add a bit of an experience. I've seen a couple on the road, and these look sick. It doesn't matter if it's a Hyundai, it doesn't matter if it's Korean, it is just cool. Simple as that. Now, another interesting electric car I want to talk about is the Volkswagen ID Buzz. This looks great, it's fun, it's quirky, and it brings back the cheerful personality that automobiles once had. This would be a seriously cool car any day of the week. However, being priced at the point that it is, I'm pretty sure it exceeds up to $70,000 with options. The only people who can afford to buy this will be the members of the Silicon Valley echo chamber who are trying to reinvent the wheel with AI. This car is solely let down by its customer base. The VW bus, once a symbol of the counterculture movement, will now be driven around by the exact same people it aimed to destroy. And because of that, this car has moved down to uncool. I'm sorry, but it's just the way it is. Now, on to another big one, the BMW M5. Look, we all know how the launch went. The car weighs as much as a double-decker bus, and it looks like as if it's trying to come out of its BMW sheet metal only to be stuck by the surface tension. And I agree with a lot of the points. This car does not make sense as a sedan as M5s once were. It's too heavy, and I get it, it's great, it has a ton of features, but it's just not that M5 recipe that we're used to. And if anyone is buying the sedan, it's gonna be people who thought that M5s were cool in the 2010s, and they bought one in 2024 as it's the only car that their significant other will let them have to satisfy their midlife crisis. The sedan is uncool, I agree. However, the M5 Touring, this on the other hand, I would argue, is actually perfect. Because it's a Touring, it's an estate, it doesn't matter that it has the gravitational pull of Jupiter. What matters is that you can take your partner and your kids on holiday while blasting down the Autobahn at 200 miles an hour without a care in the world. Estates are a lost art, and I feel like 90% of the people who own SUVs would be much better off with an estate if it wasn't for the fact that they were a bit insecure of having a car not as big. BMW M5, M5 Touring, perfect car. It is how cars of this nature should be, and this is not just cool. I'll say this is a seriously cool car. From one big car to another, it is the Toyota Land Cruiser, and particularly the Land Cruiser Prado. So Land Cruisers have a pretty weird genealogy. Same chassis, but they go down different branches and different names. The thing about Land Cruisers is, an Aussie once said, "If you want to go to the outback, get a Land Rover. But if you want to come back, get a Land Cruiser." And that is what Land Cruisers essentially are. These cars are notorious for taking down more governments than the Central Intelligence Agency, while having the option of climate control and adjustable suspension. And the new Land Cruiser sort of does follow that. I really think that they nailed that retro future look, and although it's bigger than the old one, it hides its size really well. It's boxy, it's modern, and it sort of marks a design language I think a lot of cars are gonna follow. There's no doubt of its off-road capability, and it is still a mark of stealth wealth. But for the first time, and before you get your pitchforks out, I will say that this LC Prado is on the border of cool and uncool. Now, why is that? If you compare LCs to Land Rovers, nothing about a Land Rover screams effortless. Every inch of the car and everything about the car demands every bit of your attention. It's supposed to be a workout. It's supposed to be hard to drive. It's supposed to be huffing and puffing, and you will be duly rewarded with an oil leak. Land Cruisers, on the other hand, are supposed to be effortless. The issue with the LC Prado is that because of its new 4-cylinder engine, it is gonna get all of that done, but it's not gonna be effortless. It is gonna be huffing and buffing on its way, and I think that takes away a bit from the LC charm. In contrast, if you look at the Lexus GX, which has the same chassis as this, it has that better powertrain and it has that effortless nature. That is still classic Land Cruiser, and in my opinion, that is still cool. But this new one, because of this powertrain, it's become an awkward middle child. I'm gonna have to put this in the border between cool and uncool. Now, the last car I want to talk about is the Tesla Cybertruck. Before I give the verdict on this car, I will admit, when it first came out, I sort of understood because there was a strong shock factor, right? This looks like a first generation 3D rendering on the PlayStation 1. It's not a car that should exist. They just threw pieces of metal together and said, what if we made a car? And yeah, I did think it was cool when it was first announced, but after seeing a couple in person, it just looks like Terminator's garbage truck. I'm not joking. I feel like this is supposed to work for the government to pick up your trash twice a week. I think this car is so uncool. It is so seriously uncool. It has its own category, and that is a Cybertruck category. So Tesla Cybertruck, it is Tesla Cybertruck. That was the Cool Wall January edition. This will get updated every month. Do feel free to let me know what you guys think and what cars you want to see on this wall. This was Sam Synced, and it's good morning, good evening, good night, wherever in the world that you are.